All right, today we're going to dive into a really powerful idea, one that might completely change how you think about your relationship with technology. It basically argues we need to stop thinking of ourselves as just users and start seeing our digital lives as something, well, something much more valuable and way more vulnerable.
So get this, forget the word user. A really fascinating psychological model suggests a much more provocative and maybe a much more accurate way to see our place in the digital world. You're not a user. You're a colony, a territory. Now, I know that sounds intense, but it's a metaphor that really changes everything about how we look at our data and our attention. So, what does it even mean to be a colony in this day and age? Well, this framework says your digital identity isn't just some profile you manage. Nope, it's a rich territory, and its most valuable resources, they're being systematically mined every single day.
And look, this isn't just a catchy phrase someone made up. It actually comes from a formal psychological approach, the sovereign attention re-embodiment model from theorist Albert Tan. And it says it right there. External powers, like social media platforms and tech giants, are literally in the business of extracting your personal resources.
Okay, so if we're the colony, then all this constant mining has a name: data colonialism. And that is the central conflict of our digital lives, whether we realize it or not. So the big question is, what exactly is being taken from us? The natural resources of your digital self are incredibly valuable. First, there's your data. That's the obvious one. Every click, every like, every place you check in. Second, your attention. That's the real currency of the modern internet, and it's being fought for and captured constantly. And third, and this might be the most powerful one of all, your emotions. The outrage, the joy, the validation that keeps those algorithms fed and keeps you scrolling. So what happens when this goes on for a long time? Well, the long-term effect of this colonialism is what the model calls the extractivist self. This is a version of you that's been subtly shaped and optimized not for your own happiness or well-being, but for the efficiency of the extraction process. You are literally being molded to be a more productive colony. Okay, I know, that sounds pretty bleak. But here's where the story takes a turn for the better. This model doesn't just point out the problem, it actually offers a really powerful solution. It lays out a clear path for what you could call a digital declaration of independence, a process it calls sovereignty reclamation. And we're not just talking about a simple digital detox for a week. The model describes something much deeper, a political, psychological process. It's a conscious, active journey of taking back your territory and decolonizing your own mind. So how do we actually do this? What are the tools for this revolution? Well, the model gives us what it calls a liberation toolkit. It proposes 3 core strategies, 3 therapeutic mechanisms to help us get back our digital freedom. Here they are. First, going on a data strike, which means actively experiencing what it's like to be untracked. Next, learning to fortify your borders by treating app permissions like they're international treaties. And finally, deliberately reconnecting with your wild self, the parts of you that just can't be digitized. Let's just pause on this idea of border treaties for a second because it's so powerful. The model is basically telling us to stop mindlessly clicking "I agree." Instead, you got to start viewing every privacy policy, every notification request as a serious negotiation over your sovereign territory. So go into your settings, be aggressive about it, renegotiate the terms of these digital treaties. And what about that wild self? This is all about finding the parts of your experience that exist completely beyond the reach of data collection. It's that feeling you get when you hike up a mountain, or a deep spiritual moment, or even just the complex sensation of listening to live music. These are experiences that belong only to you, that can't be turned into a commodity. So, where does all this lead? What's the ultimate goal of the data strikes and the border fortifications? It's to become a sovereign self. The final state that we're all striving for is what the model calls digital autonomy. And this is the end goal right here, to achieve a state of digital autonomy, where your phone, your apps, your computer, they're all tools again, tools that serve your interests. A state where you're the subject calling the shots, not the colony that's being endlessly mastered and mined for resources. So, we'll leave you with this one final thought. As you go about your day, just look at how you interact with your technology and ask yourself this simple but really powerful question. In this relationship, are you the master or are you the colony? Answering that question for yourself, that's the first step toward reclaiming your sovereignty.